You want to fight crime? Let's get dangerous.
And it is showtime, and we're a couple of seconds late here. And for some reason, it just didn't put me right there like it's supposed to be. Hello, friends. We're back. It's another Saturday, and we're here. We got another show here. Hopefully, you guys are out there, because tonight is going to be more along the lines of what you guys want to talk about, because I really don't want to rant. I did see something on the interwebs to kind of sort of rant about, but I don't want to do that because of the title today. Today's topic is, we really need more positivity in collecting here. We shouldn't be at odds. We shouldn't be in a position where things get poo-pooed or canceled or whatever, for whatever reasons, just because of difference of opinions and stuff to that magnitude. But nevertheless, we still got other things that we could talk about to keep the positivity in collecting here. So before we get into all, as Mr. T would say, the jibber jabber of things here, let's not forget about Stupid O'Clock happening 1 hour into the show. If we go into our second hour here, that is followed up by Last Man Standing at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then you get a little bit of a respite for Monday until you get Nicholas Tockert with Nevermind the Furthermore at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 9 o'clock Central my time here. And we will be having Comic Book Spectrum this week. This week's topic, at least cartoon that we're going to revisit, is going to be the Galaxy Trio. And I did have kind of like a fan theory to point out with that here, but we're going to talk about that on Thursday. So with that out the way here, I know you guys kind of like some of the stuff here, but I'm going to wait and see if we get a little bit more people here before I go ahead and start that here. While we're waiting for people, I'm actually going to kind of sort of work on this here. Let me bring this over to the other screen here. What I'm doing here, I'm kind of working on some screen graphics right now for Comic Book Spectrum, for those who might be interested in seeing what that might entail here. Oh, it would help if I share the screen too. Working off of one laptop, sometimes everything is that. Yeah, I'm in After Effects right now, and I'm actually working on some of the screen graphics and everything to that magnitude here, and trying to spiff up or produce a little bit better results here before we get into some of the other stuff here. So this is where everything is at there. So we're going to add the JPEG one more time. I don't think it did it. But this is, kind of like the stuff that I know that kind of bores people, but we're going to get into we're going to get into our normal comic book pickups for the week and everything here in a few seconds. I'm just waiting for more people to pop on because it gets to the point where okay, we got it now. It's just it took it a while for it to do its thing. So I need to, yeah, there we go. Right there. So I did not move it. Ever since I updated this laptop to Windows 11, I get some of the strangest results here. Plus, I am actually streaming too, so a lot of this stuff is acting really wonky because of the weirdness with streaming. But I'm going to try to do my best here to talk to you as well as that. We finally got people here. So now we're going to eventually get into new comic book pickups for the week here in a couple of seconds here, because I really want to make certain that we got what I was working on. At least that's too big, so we're going to do 200. Nah, 250. So we're about to get rated. It's not erasing the old number. That's the reason why it's so big. Just want to increase by 250. There we go. And then at the 30 mark, it goes back down to 0. And just for the quick little preview here, for you can see what I'm working on here. This is, trying to get newer screen graphics, because the if I could say, the on-screen personalities for Comic Book Spectrum has changed kind of permanently for a bit. We have to update some of the other stuff here. Yep. Ooh, guava pasta and cheese. Okay. That's good. I'm about to say I didn't stop it. Okay, so let's try this again. I don't know why it stopped in the middle of it. So let me move my cursor over here. We're just doing kind of like the final check here before I minimize it here. I was waiting for people to jump on before we do new comic book pickups for the week here. But yeah, I've been about to get ready to work on a new intro for Comic Book Spectrum, since we got new on-screen personalities. Our show should reflect that more so than anything else. Yep, that's going to work. That's definitely going to work. So we got, I forgot it repeats. I got it on a loop. So we know that that's going to work here. And I know me. So if I know myself, cancel. So now we got that saved. So now it is time officially, since we got people here, it is now officially that time once again for the week here to do everybody's favorite part here, new comic book pickups for the week here. So what do we have that came in this week here? We got some things that came in through Brotherhood Comics. That's been kind of like a big to do, but I do thank them for at least getting the stuff that I did buy here. There's still part of my stuff is still out there thanks to how US Mail is here. So thank you, US Mail, for not giving me everything. But there's going to be stuff that I got to send back too because it's not my order. But I already worked things out with Brotherhood here. But first on the docket here, we got another copy of Trinity #1. This is the new Trinity. This was the new Trinity series when Rebirth actually started to happen here. And then we got Elektra #19. Matter of fact, I think I have to find my rest of my Elektra collection here. I know I have it up in storage. Oh, we could talk about storage too. We're going to talk about storage after we finish here. We got another Batwoman #1. And then I finally got the first issue. I believe this is Spider-Woman Volume 2. Spider-Woman Volume 2, #1, which is nice. And I believe that this is a White Widow #1, or is it? I believe it's White Widow #1. Yeah, White Widow #1. So there it is, the White Widow #1. Then we got the Jenny I didn't take the tag off of this here. So we're going to take the blue tape and tags off of this one. But this is the Jenny Frison Zatanna Bringing Down the House #2. The Jenny Frison Zatanna Bringing Down the House #2 here. Now they actually mislabeled this one too. This is Volume 3 of Will Eisner's The Spirit from, I believe this is Dynamite that did this here, but they got it labeled as issue 1, but it's really issue #2. This is the version variant for issue #2. They have it as listed as issue 1, but when I look inside of it, or actually after I scanned the barcode that's on here, it came up as issue 2. It comes up as issue 2 on. Actually, this is Volume 1, issue 3. So I gotta double check ZLZ, but I'm trying to see if I can get this without the glare for you guys to see it. But it comes up as issue 3, but they got it as issue 1. No, it's like what did it say? Volume 1, issue 3. So this is Dynamite's version of Will Eisner's The Spirit, Volume 1, issue 3, first printing. Matter of fact, I do have my phone here. Let me double check. I believe that's CLZ scanned it as something completely different. Always double checking sources here. So hopefully you guys are doing okay here, because tonight it's been one of those weird feeling nights. And when I say weird feeling nights, it's just been one of those things where I was like, I just got through watching a couple of videos on YouTube. I've been watching Strange New Worlds as well. I had a couple of decent, okay laughs, but nothing that I could really say per se that is wow, it did not come up on my CLZ, or did I not save it? Okay, let me double check here, because I'm looking in my listings for the book, and it's not coming up here. Add it, scan the barcode again. Yeah, it came up as issue 3. So now, since I see how they got it listed, they preference Will Eisner's name first. So it's considered, this is considered Will Eisner's Spirit #1 from Dynamite instead of just Spirit #1. No, that's the Spirit number issue 3, volume 1. They preface it as Will Eisner's. We finally got Spider-Woman number 10. I believe this is, it says Legacy 105. So there's been 105 issues of Spider-Woman at this point here. Then we got another copy of X-Men 59, which is good. A missing variant copy of Monica Rambeau Photon number 1. And yes, I do have the full Photon series here, just like I'd have the full Huntress series. So we got an issue 1 and issue 2. I bought them at a bundle for issue 1 and issue 2 of, I believe this is the 2011 run of Huntress, which only lasted 6 issues. And I was able to pick up this nice little gem here, which is the Jenny Frison Department of Truth variant B. I have no idea if I'm going to like Department of Truth or not, but it's just like I know other people like it and whatnot, and getting it for the price that I did, can't beat it with a stick here. Just like with this one here, this is Lois Lane 136. This is like the second to last Superman girlfriend, Lois Lane, from that very first run here. And we also got a 9-4 of Thor Annual 18. This is the first cameo appearance of female Loki, where Loki was a woman. And again, that comes back down to something else that, all the books here. Yep. This comes back down to something that I want to bring up, because I started looking into this. And this is one of the other reasons why I didn't want to rant either. But I'm about to show you something. I'm about to show you guys something here. So this book was kind of popular when they introduced Sylvie in the Loki TV series. So there was popularity for this actual book if you're going to go based upon TV spec. Now, this is a 9-4, and I think I believe I paid like $24 or $26 for it, the 9-4. Now, in its hype, in its popularity hype, people paid a lot of money for this book here in the nines here. A 9-4, and I'm going based upon as of right now. So, I didn't make a bad purchase per se. I might overpay maybe somewhere between $4 to $6 here based upon the information I'm about to get ready to show you now. So when I go out here to GP analysis here, and just to let you know, we have the 2023, 2024, the 12-month average, and the 90-day average. 2023, $23. 2024, book was $15. So far, because there's not a whole bunch of sales on this, it dropped down to $1, and they're saying like the last 30-day average is $1. This is GP analysis here. And even when I click on this here, they're showing one particular sale, but it's not even really showing you much other than somebody getting it kind of like graded and whatnot here. So that's not accurate. When I go out to Go Collect, they're saying that, they kind of projected that as a $20 fair market value. I really don't see it as much as that, because, based upon the last few sales between 2022 and 2023, we have a 26, 20, 29, 20, 20, 23. So I paid just about the right amount of price here, somewhere about $24 to $26. So it really hasn't taken that much of a hit here. But saying all that to say here is like we can see that with GP analysis that they don't really have much sales data on this book. So if you're really going on this whole speculation that you're going to make a whole bunch of money off of this book, don't do it. But what I also brought up here is Key Collector, the significance, like I said before, is the first cameo appearance as Loki as a female. Loki shapeshifts Thor into a dragon and a monster here. First appearance, Hymir the Flame, half elf, half fire demon, and it had a polybag card. So that's the key thing. If you actually bought it raw, that would be it here. But as you can see, they even projected it at a high. And when they say high, they're talking about high grade. 9.4 would be considered more or less high grade. $25 mid grade is 8 and low grade is 2, which is about fair, for the price here. So the reason I brought that up is mainly because, be careful when you buying books here, especially when you're getting them through like claim sales and auctions and stuff like that. This was more of an auction purchase that I made certain that I stayed within the ramifications of not really getting a cheap steal. It would be more along the lines, hey, I'm not going to pay more than what the book is actually worth here. And that's the reason why I brought up all the other information here. So that was new comic book pickups for the week here. So these books will go into storage next week. And speaking of storage, guess what I found out by sorting books this week? I pretty much got almost a complete run of Volume 2, Volume 3, and part of Volume 4 for the Justice League of America run. And again, I've been collecting for years, and it's like some of these books I haven't seen in years. So I'm going through, it's like, yeah, I had a box that I said Justice League, and I just threw all these Justice League books up in there. I didn't find a lot of stuff, the older stuff that most people would know, but now I have to find my box for JLA because I might have a complete run of JLA in storage that I probably didn't even know that I actually had a complete run. And I'm darn near almost have a complete run of the second Justice Society. So it's a lot of stuff that I have to take a look at. I'm missing one issue of Justice League 3000, and I forgot what was the other one that I have to figure out here. But I still got to go back and figure out JSA and JLA, because those are considered completely separate titles in CLZ. But we're getting there. We're getting closer and closer to getting the bigger runs that I have all gathered up and in their own particular boxes, and then that way I could fill in the extra spaces that I have here with the smaller stuff. Like, for example, I don't have like a big run of Iron Man books, so that's going to be separate. I still have to go through Spider-Man. I'm finding out that I was bequeathed a lot of Marvel Comics Presents dealing with Wolverine. So that's going to be another one here, because I'm not a big Wolverine fan, but between high school and college and now, when you had other friends and stuff that collect comic books with you and they're up here like, well, I don't want them anymore, you can have them. And they bequeath them to you. You just like, okay, fine, I'm just going to put them away and just store them. And that's what I did. So I'm up here like, people go up into these comic book sales and everything, and Parallax knows, she always calls me snobby, and it's like, I'm not really a snob. I just know what I personally collect, and I don't know what I truly have in storage in this aspect here. So I don't know what I have in storage. So when people put up things like the Volume 2 and Volume 3 of like Justice League here, yeah, you like saying that. You just like saying that. And when they put up things like Spider-Man and stuff like that, I really don't know exactly to full extent of what I have here. And then there's some books, Spider-Man books, that are just like, meh, I go meh. And then there's other ones like, the Miles Morales run. I might have full runs of that. I should have like a complete set of Spider-Man, that short mini series and stuff to that magnitude. I know I went through a lot of the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man. I have a whole bunch of those here. I still got to sort through all of those. I got my Spidey Super Stories, because why? I grew up with Spidey Super Stories. I got runs of Superior Spider-Man. Almost got a complete run of Volume 1 of that. So it's like a lot of things that, like I said, as I get them organized and everything, I have a better picture of everything in ZLZ, and I could go from there to be like, okay, do I really need this, or do I just pass on it? And lately I've been passing on a lot of books that people are up here like, oh, I have good prices for that. It's like, yeah, you got good prices, but that's not what I'm on the market for. And I know what I'm in the market for, and people seem to not have that type of stuff here. So, and I'm not going to pay a lot of markup for a lot of different stuff here. Yeah, we sent you a picture that's funny. If you see, they sending me stuff. They sending me pictures. So what is the picture that was sent? Okay, for some reason, the chat on Facebook is taking a long time here. It's running a lot of stuff behind the scenes here, but it is what it is. Okay, so now it's loading up the picture. Oh, now I begin to understand the Louis Armstrong reference here. They're trying to put this meme to the song of "It's a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong. All because of the all because of the first line, and I get it here. I'm not going to deny you guys of the joke here. It's like, I see trees are green trees there too. I see the trees and they are green, and I think to myself, I'm lost in the woods. So you happy now? Y'all happy now? You should be happy. Normally I don't do stuff like that, but nevertheless, let's talk about some accountability and updates here. I've been splitting my times between two stories here. I've been working on Primetime Saturday Night with the first bout here, plus issue number 3 of Legends of the Giantess Slayer, primarily the third chapter of Legends 101. And they going, yay! But with that being stated, I can't, for some reason, I'm having a hard time focusing, because as I work on one book, I'll be like, okay, do it. Then I think about it, I was like, oh yeah, I got a great idea for this. And then I would jump, and it's like, I need to get myself focused. And the cleaner I get this area here, because I almost got it cleaned up where I could be like, instantly move the stuff off the table, put my Bristol boards down, get to drawing of Amazonia and doing what I need to do here. If I get to that point, Prime Time Saturday Night and Legends of the Giants and Slayer will come, be like secondary. It'd be like more along the lines like, as soon as I finish drawing 28 pages, or I can't remember off the top of my head here, but that's with one of the other things here. And also in storage, I found at least I want to say a 9-4 candidate of Prudence and Caution, #1. And I finally got issue #2, which was the last issue of that too. So I got to put that in my to grade bin. So we got to get that graded. So all of that is good and dandy here. I still got to figure out ways to, between now and then, to generate and earn money. I'm still debating if I'm going to come back to Whatnot to sell some books here. I still have the bin. I still got more stuff that I pulled from storage to sell, the odds to end freebie stuff that I get from other comic book sellers too, stuff that I really don't really collect or feel that it's like, hey, I could give this, I could sell it for cheap to someone else here. And also thinking about changing my format if I go back to Whatnot. I'm not going to do auctions. That's why I'm going to do buy, everything as a buy it now. Buy books at $1 and $2 a piece here. Be easier. Just be easier for people to buy. The only problem that I might run into is how Whatnot deals with shipping. So people might end up paying the bulk of it would be paying the shipping one, like a $2 book or a $3 book or a $1 book, more so than anything else. But the auction stuff is too much of a pain. And the only reason I'm debating about going to that format, because every now and then I get a sale of a book because people go into my bin, see what I got, they like the price, and then next thing you know, it's like a blip pops up saying, hey, you gotta send out this book. And I wonder if like, what do you mean? And then I look at it, it's like, oh, somebody bought this book. So I pull it out, wrap it up, send it off on its merry way. And 2 or 3 days later, here's your portion of that sale. So, having like a $5 book and you come back and get $3 off of that $5 book, it's like, hey, that's not bad. That passive income does come in handy. And that's without being live. And that's the key thing here. It's like, and that's what I think that some people, but I shouldn't say some people, sellers on Whatnot, I believe is not really taking advantage of the fact that you want to have things in your, if I could say, bin or buy it now side of your account always running, because you may not want to do a live show and be out there on camera and this, that, and the other, but at least your wares will still be out there, as long as you're not up here like double dipping and triple dipping and putting the same books on multiple platforms, and then you forget, oh, I should have took that off of Whatnot and everything. That's the major thing here. You don't have to have a live show. You don't have to do $1 auction starts and everything. You don't have to do everything as an auction. You can still make sales with buy it nows from your bin, from your store. And that's the main thing here, because I think I got about like 8 to 10 books back there that I got to take pictures of and put them in my bin. And I probably do them like at $1, $2 here. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and show you what I'm talking about here. Did I misplace? No, they're right here. Duh. So things that would be coming to the whatnot, buy it now, stuff like this, like a Blue Beetle 14, probably going to be $1. Fantastic Force number 44, $1. Captain Atom number 1, probably be like a $2 book. Legion Secret Files 3033, $2 book. Cable 35, probably $1. Secret Origins featuring the Atom, probably $1. Animal Man 57, probably a $2 book, and Bane Conquest probably like a $2 book. So, like I said, that's eight books. 8 books coming. You know, I gotta take pictures and stuff of and get them all out there on whatnot for you guys to pick up here. But you know, that's kind of like the major thing here for what we're trying to do in the bigger scheme of things here. So that brings us to tonight's topic is we need way more positivity in collecting. What do I mean by that, people? After seeing what I've seen here, and Parallax know what I'm talking about. And yeah, don't get on me about product placement here with the Cherry Coke here. But the main thing here is that the more I see on the interwebs with people who are collectors or who talks about collecting or investing in comics and all this other stuff, the more I'm seeing how some people are just really capitalizing off of the negativity aspects of it. And the last thing that I saw here is the fact that comic book stores were capitalizing off of the fact that a book got canceled because a creator said something negative that was very, very political after a certain individual's death. And I was like, it unnerves me. It really unnerves me here because we talked about this kind of sort of on Comic Book Spectrum, but I never really delved into it nor talked about how I truly feel about it. And the thing that I'm getting into is separating the creator from their work. Now, a lot of times it becomes hard because when you become a big fan of a creator, whether it be a writer or artist, you know, an inker, a colorist, or stuff to that magnitude, when you become like a diehard fan of said individual who makes the books, when they do something so dubious that, you know, there's no other choice to be like, this is a very despicable human being, you have a tendency to lash out and be like, screw him, I'm not going to deal with the stuff that I do like that he or she have produced. The problem with that is that technically you're not hurting said individual. That money has been said and gone and purchased. It had helped the company that they work for make their money. And by the time said scandal comes to its climax and people start getting into their cancel culture type aspect of it, pretty much the company that hired him was just doing it, you know, firing him just pretty much to save face. You know, it's not going to hurt them one way or the other. In this case, it ended up costing this one creator their title that they were working on got canceled. So one issue came out of it, and that's going to be the only issue that comes out for that particular series. So far, that is what is being reported. That is what has actually hit the presses, have been press released and everything to that magnitude. Now, comic book stores are taking advantage of this here, promoting it as a rare book when it really is not. It was set to be an ongoing series. this publisher had it where it's going to be an ongoing series. It's going to have multiple issues until said creator did what they did. So, like I said, in order to save face, they released the issue 1, but that's it. Now, the way that you should look at it is this: it's not a rare book, because the series was going to happen regardless. So it wasn't like a one-off. It wasn't like it was done by a small press like myself, where that one book could be the only thing that we thought about creating and, throw it out there to see if it floats, and if it does, we make more. The publisher had it as an ongoing series. They're pulling back on their reins, because normally if you have an ongoing series and you release that issue number 1, issue 2 and 3 is probably already done. They just are going to be like, nope, we're not going to release it because we don't want the PR from the said creator that says something over the interwebs that is contrary to the company's well-being. So the book is not rare, but yet you got fans, you got stores and everything capitalizing off of the negativity of what one creator said, because it affected the outlying product that was being produced. Again, that comes back to, I don't understand why negativity just gets so much publicity and making people speculate on stupid things here. Because no matter which side of the fence that you sit on dealing with said creator, eventually you're going to have to deal with the scenario is, can I separate the creator from their work? If you can separate the creator from his work, go ahead, buy the book and everything, but you shouldn't have to pay a premium for said book, at least for this one issue, all because of the so-called controversy that it is. And even to this day, I still have a hard time dealing with the whole, the Spider-Woman #1 for Milo Manara. I'm still trying to track one down for under $1,000. To be quite honest here, that's with one of those things, and that was at the pinnacle of the cancel culture type aspect here. And to be quite honest, the cover that was done was more of a knee-jerk reaction to a greater degree, because it really depends on what side of the fence that you were on, whether it be with Milo Manara and whether or not you was a fan of his, with Marvel and how they dealt with the whole concept of dealing with the newer fan base that was trying to come into comics at that time, or the legacy that characters from Spider-Man history has done, because the pose that was in question was considered overly sexualized. And I don't think it really was, because the legacy character, Peter Parker, has always been, have been in that pose before. But what set the tone for this discussion about sexualization was not because of the pose itself. It was more so because of the person who drew and illustrated it, Milo Manara. And why was this so important? Give me 1 second. It was so important because Milo Manara was known for his more erotic illustrations before he was hired to do covers for Marvel. And this was going to be like one of his first major covers that he did for Marvel, which was that Spider-Woman #1. People got wind of that. And they saw the pose and they just flipped out. They literally flipped out. They went off the rocker and everything. It's like, how dare Marvel go and grab a artist who has been known to draw erotica to do this cover without really objectively looking at the cover for what it was. Then they were saying, well, it's overly sexualized because no woman would be in that pose, in that aspect, let alone if any character would be in that pose. And we saw that, nope, Peter has been in that pose several times. They pretty much, are part of the whole kind of like legacy of Peter, because if it wasn't for Peter, we would not have Jessica Drew. So with all of that being in the mix during the mid 2000s, one could question why this whole scenario of negativity by I wouldn't say even a small market. It would be more along the lines, this is what was coming in to comics, the newer people who were coming into comics, the newer collectors, the fan base was shifting from those who had like, scantily clad women and all this other stuff. It was shifting to something that was more towards, a whole era where it's like things got to change, uniforms and stuff have to change and everything to fit the newer type reader that was coming in. Now, what's fascinating about this time is that the loudest voice that was coming in dealing with this were not the ones buying the books. And it's still kind of sort of that way today. The loudest voices has always been the ones that have not been participating or collecting per se. Yes. ASM Volume 2, Issue 30. And let me go ahead and do that here, just for people to be able to see it here. Because it's always good to show people what's going on as opposed to just telling them. I want people to be educated in this aspect here, because usually I don't play favorites. I don't condemn people. I don't want people to feel like, oh, you just on this side or that side. It's like, no, I'm being objective here. I'm being very objective and unbiased. I mean, I could go on record for a lot of this different type of stuff here. Okay, let me do it this way. Key Collector is just being a turd right about now, because I'm trying to look up Amazing Spider-Man and it's not letting me do Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2. So I got to figure out how they got Amazing Spider-Man listed here. So just bear with me for another second here. Well, that's definitely not on Key Collector. Okay, fine. Go to Go Collect. I know Go Collect would have it. And again, that goes to show you that everything is not a key comic book here. But we're bringing up this type of information for a reason. There it is. Here it is. This is the book. This is the post that we was talking about. People were complaining that Jessica Drew's butt was high up, arched, and everything in a similar pose to this one. The same pose, one of the more iconic poses that Peter would have when doing the whole Spider-Man thing here, doing his normal thing here. And it's like, oh, the male characters would not be posed like that. Guess again. No matter how many times, those who are participating in the industry was talking about that, like I said before, the outcry was more for the fact that they hired Milo Manara more so than what the book represented here. Just like the J. Scott Campbell Riri Williams cover. They talked about it was over sexualized, and they were talking about colorism because they made her lighter. It's like, no. J. Scott Campbell's artwork, the way that they do lighting for it, would make her lighter. So, it's like, oh, she's not dark enough. It's like people were coming in that did not understand the production aspect of comics, coming in complaining about it. And like I said, the loudest voices for this were not the ones buying the books. This is why some creators, such as like Dan Slott, was falling out of favor with a lot of people when he was saying to the effect that it's like, if you didn't buy the book, you're not considered a customer, therefore we don't have to listen to you. And to a greater degree, he's kind of correct. And the way that I could put it to you where you could understand where he was going with that argument. Let's just say that you went to your grocery store and you bought a box of like hefty garbage bags. You get them home and everything, you find that one of the bags were defective. Because you bought that box of bags here, you could go to the people who make the healthy garbage bags and complain, and they have to make it correct. However, if you kind of like a bystander and you're up here is like, hey, I know the person who had that defective bag and everything, and you went up to said company and started complaining, they don't have to listen to you. You didn't buy the product. No matter how much you are a quote unquote potential customer, that's what you are. You're a potential. Until you buy and partake, you have no stake in the matter. And that's the problem. You have to have some type of stake in the conversation here. Meaning that a lot of the times that people have outrage, like, how they used to talk about back in the days with television, it's like, oh, we had all these moms and dads writing in about how this one cartoon was such a way. They themselves may not have watched a cartoon, their child did. But the thing that most broadcasters were afraid of is how much control parents had back then about making their child turn off the television during that time slot. That was the only reason why complaining when you don't have a stake works, is because the person who is producing it or the person who is responsible for distribution of it may have to look at it in such a way that, okay, the average kid does not control what a household will watch at a given time. Therefore, we have to listen to the people who may control the situation here. When it comes to reading materials and stuff to that magnitude, it always comes back down to the person who's actually reading it, the person who actually bought the book. This is one of the reasons why sometimes I sit back and think about how book burning to me is kind of stupid. Because you going out there, you buy the book just to burn it because you're upset with the content of it. How do you know what the content actually represents until you read it? There's sometimes a lot of the hearsay gets people in more trouble than really knowing what's going on here. And I could go straight down the line here, with some of the bigger names here, like the Greg Horns, the Milo Maneras, the Frank Cho's. I mean, it was rampant from mid 2000s to maybe like 2010, 2011, sometime around there. And you saw how characters' costumes were changed, how legacy characters went from their iconic uniforms to something that was more suitable for the potential audience that these publishers were trying to attract. And this is where I honestly believe where editors lost their steam to marketers. Because the marketers were saying, we don't need the bad press. While the editors are saying, we're trying to make good product. And if you're going to try to make good product, sometimes the feedback and backlash from potential customers may throw things off here. And that's a bad thing. And this is coming back to, like I said, keeping things positive and separating the creators from the work. During the time of the early 2000s, a lot of people could not separate Milo Manera from stuff like this to covers like Spider-Woman #1. They couldn't make that separation. They're up here. It's like, we don't want people who do erotic illustrations doing what people at that time still thinking children's comic books. And up there, it's like Spider-Woman in the early mid 2000s, early 2010s was not meant for truly 13 and 14-year-olds or anybody younger than that. It was really meant more for like those that was, 16, 17, getting of age, more so than anything like that. Most comic books during that time was really written more for those who was more of age. And this is where I kind of fault marketing more so, even to this day, because here in the States, we have to get to the point where comic strip animation is not looked at as a child's, and I put it in quotation marks, as child's entertainment. It's entertainment for all. This is the reason why we have a category for all ages. And all ages is really nothing more than G-rated for like a movie. Or PG. We used to have PG. Now everything seems like it's G. Just like PG-13 was really like a downgraded version of R. But keeping, things kind of relative. All ages was really the stuff that was really written for younger viewers or younger audience, mainly because it's something that adults could say, yes, this is more safe, giving it like that G or PG type feel to it. Another thing that happened in the 2010s was the creation of young adult. Young adult was, that 13, 14, 15-year-old group that marketing came up with It's like, hey, we're going to start marketing stories such as this. And we all know and we all heard what happened with the I'm Not Starfire book. Yeah. Right. Now, I give marketing kudos for the attempt, but I also blame them for the book failing because, again, an editor would have told you that this would have been a bad idea. Now, those who knows the show here know that I reviewed another one of those so-called young adult books called Nubia the Real One. And yeah, I did kind of blasted it for altering a lot of legacy lore. But for what it was kind of like a hit and miss at the same time. It hit those things that made Nubia what she would have been, but they changed the lore so much, and they changed the story in such a way that it made it a dated story. They tried to be too social relevant in that aspect of her being the way that she is, who she was living with. It was a lot of things that just did not feel organic enough, where it really felt like it was like a PG-13 or something that would be befitting for somebody from the ages of 13 to maybe like 17. It really didn't feel that way. It felt very, if I could say, social relevant, as opposed to just telling a good story. That's a problem. And reason why it's a problem, because it shows that marketing had a lot more pull about the story had to hit these types of check boxes, as opposed to let's write a great story. And then after we write this great story, now marketing. These are the key points that are in this story, and we should figure out a ways to market it correctly here. And I truly feel that DC's young adult titles really were mainly a miss because they put the marketing ahead of editing instead of the other way around. The stories could have been a lot better. And what really gets me here is that you told better stories for your, if I could say, your all ages stuff. Your all ages stuff felt more organic than this stuff that you was trying to do for teenagers. It's just weird in that aspect here. But it also goes to show how when marketing departments seeing negativity, and when I say negativity, it's like those who are complaining that are potential customers and not actual. Because again, I could give you stories about actual customers. If you ever go to like a Comic-Con and sit in panels where you have store owners talking to like the Marvel execs or the DC execs, it's not pretty. Those are your customers. They're getting right through the coals due to lack of sales because of a lot of things that we're talking about. They're telling them, my customers don't like this, and this in these books. And these executives like, guess what? We're going to give them more of that because our R&D shows that the trend is moving this way. And for us to survive, we have to attract these people. We're not saying that we don't care about our current people who buy. We're not saying that. But Just like the saying for Otto Lilienthal, sacrifices must be made. And that's a problem. And, not to quote, you know, I hate doing it. I hate quoting Beauty and the Beast, but it's now becoming, that standpoint and that mentality is now becoming like a tale is, a tale as old as time when it comes to American comics. And people sit back and wonder, it's like, well, why are all the younger kids going to manga? For that very reason. A lot of them had access to manga and anime that we didn't have back in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, and even in the early 2000s. 2010s, 2020s. I mean, think about it. By that time, we had like how many Pokemon series, how many Sailor Moon series, how many Yu-Gi-Oh series, how many all these different anime coming out and everything, and it was easier to access it. And then we had other publishing companies in Americas that would doing the translation and bringing those books over here. And then they also have stories that covers a wider variety of interest here. That sets a tone here. Instead of looking at it for what it was, a lot of the American publishers doubled down on what they were doing. They didn't think about, oh, maybe we should go this route and start telling more tales like this. Nope, we stuck to our, suits and tights. We stuck to our horror. We stuck to, whatever little romance that was still around. And then it just, there's so much more that could be there. And again, I never thought I would have even the iota of success dealing with a wrestling comic book. But like I said, there's something out there for everybody if people just would look for it. But getting back to the topic, it's about being on that positive wavelength here. I could sit all day talking about what things are not being done here, but what needs to be done by people like myself who have a YouTube channel, who does these type of broadcasts, is just to be positive and highlight those things that we love and we like, and get people on board with why we like this stuff. Not why we hate it, not why we dislike what's going on and everything to that magnitude. Trust me, I could feel each and every week of why I don't like Tom King's Wonder Woman. But what do I do instead? I tell those people who love Tom King's Wonder Woman, come on board. Sit at the same table I sit as one with that I do as a Wonder Woman fan. I don't knock the writer or creator of who's doing what at that point. I care about the camaraderie. Yeah, you might like this version. I like everything that comes before it. As a matter of fact, I like Absolute, and maybe we could, have a discussion about Absolute here. Your sarcasm comes at a great time, all 17 of them, but it's still, and I wouldn't say 17 of them, but one of the things that, and it's a shame to notice it the way that I have noticed it. The ones who talk highly about the Tom King Wonder Woman are more male than female. And I always scratch my head with that. And then when I take that step back and look at what he's doing in those books, I understand why. And it also makes me wonder, have they ever read anything dealing with Wonder Woman prior to 1970? Because they like all the action and lack of true storytelling They don't like, in depth, if I could say, exposition in the story. But a lot of stuff that's happening in Tom King's Wonder Woman is more action driven, and it's not even a true balance of what he's trying to do as far as dealing with the whole ideas and lore within Diana's history previously to that. And the one thing that I still can't stand about his run on Wonder Woman is that you started the story with the Sovereign talking to Elizabeth, aka Trinity, about his dealings with Diana. You never came back to that. You never developed Trinity. There was no development of going back and forth with the whole thing about the lasso of lies and the fact that, there was an equivalent to a lasso of truth. But you've been making waves with the Bible thumping, the more masculine aspect of combat in Wonder Woman, downplaying feminism, overplaying the hand about Themyscira and how they should be looked at, and how it was kind of changing the way that even girls were looking at what they could be and how powerful they could become. It just one of those things that it just seems like he was writing something that was more of like a male power grab, as opposed to writing a character who's overcoming obstacles, dealing with the more chauvinistic aspect of the world. Again, ham-fisting your point does not tell a good story. And I felt that way ever since issue number 1. When the news outlet talked about that first bar fight between the Amazon and every male in that bar. And the story was well illustrated because we saw the full thing. She was not the aggressor. The Amazon was not the aggressor. The men in the bar was. All because she didn't want to get hit upon. And then they disrespected her. She gave them outs. She did not want to fight them. They became the aggressor. She did what she had to do to protect herself. The media flipped it. Now, mind you, with the whole paradigm with Donna DC, with the general population of the world not trusting supers anymore, it played into that aspect here. But that very first scene and story that hit the news worldwide, painting a picture that we're victim shaming. How dare you defend yourself? Nobody talks about that in this version of Wonder Woman. Nobody wants to talk about that aspect of how he painted the picture, and he kept painting the picture. He kept, wanting to move away in like the first 10 or so issues into that direction. And then all of a sudden it's like everything is hunky-dory. We got the Wonder Woman family together. We want to help Diana through this whole thing. And we're supposed to be okay with that. It's like, no, the damage is done. You changed the lore. You changed the lore so much that now, they're up here thinking about revoking Themyscira from the UN and all this other stuff, and making what could have been a very powerful ally for the world an enemy. But we don't talk about that type of stuff. And like I said before, it's like people either talk about why they poo-poo it or why they love it. I can sit here and like how I illustrated those things here. I can see why some people may love it. I can see people like myself that dislike it. But I also make those people who dislike it, it's like you still at the same table with me when it comes to the fandom. Because why I can accept the fact that you like it. It is my job as a fellow fan to not convince you to like the other stuff, but to introduce you to certain aspects of it that makes it positive for you to go ahead and check it out for yourself. That was one of the things that I challenged my if I could say it in this aspect, the Comic Book Spectrum crew before we had the mass exodus of the founders. That was the one reason why I got brought into the show, into Comic Book Spectrum, because I watched it religiously. It was big fan of everybody that was there, and the key question that I constantly was harping on them about was like, you guys are doing the same books over and over and over again. There's a plethora of other stuff that's in here. And then I put out the challenge to them. The way that you convinced me to start reading some of this other stuff here is to find something that I might like that's in horror. Find me something that I might like that may be like Superman related. And this is one of the reasons why Clyde and I had like this thing, because we would challenge each other with older books that I might not even know about, and he would be like, well, do you remember this from the old days? I was like, yeah, maybe you want to check this out. But when it came to horror, I went out my way to go look for horror books, and I would come on and I would review them and I would berate them heavily, because it wasn't horror. It wasn't what I consider horror. And that's one of the reasons why I made that challenge to those four guys. It wasn't one of those things to say, oh, it's like there's no such good thing as horror books. Like, no, there's great horror books out there. But the challenge is find something that I might like. We're all sitting at the same table. If I'm reading all the stuff that you guys are reading and I'm just not feeling it, help me to understand why I'm not feeling it. And that's the key thing here. What do I feel is horror comic book wise? The best way I could present horror, or at least something that I would actually probably sit down and read and not be like ready to berate it, is probably like something like the older magazine formats, like the old school Creepy, the old school Eerie's, because they had some type of aspect of a thriller. They're not trying to go, trying to get you up and into blood and gore and mutilation here. There was some type of underlying exposition that causes you to be on edge, or to be invested in a character, to understand why they would be scared and why they are terrified, or have some type of situation to make you feel what they're feeling. The older Creepies, the older Eerie's, some of the older EC books would be like, those type of horror type standards that I would be like, okay, I might be interested in reading that. Heck, even things like, if you go back far enough, like to the 1940s, 1950s, things like Crime Does Not Pay, I would put in kind of like the horror aspect of it. Even though it's police stories, but it's police stories about mass murderers and stuff to that magnitude, where you get to see the mindset of a criminal. and some of the things that they would do that was really more horror driven. Those is what I consider books that is more horror related. You know, I believe one of the books that I did in Comic Book Spectrum was like something in techno horror that Black Caravan did. That was not, it was nowhere near horror. It's like it got to the point where it's like it started to tell a story and this, that, and the other, but it had no dread, no fear, or anything to that magnitude. It was more along the lines of being told for you to have like this one big jump type scare to get you sucked into something that could have been told a little bit later. Or it had something where something ended up happening, something ended up happening, a person in the story got really bloodied or killed a certain way to make it like, oh, this was really terrible and this, that, and the other. It's like, it's not hitting those beats to make it a horror story, in my opinion. So TN comedy, hopefully that answers your question here. I'm greatly and happy that you asked me that question, because a lot of times people don't ask. And that's the thing. It's like one of the key questions that I always ask at comic book conventions, especially if you stop at my table and you ask me about the books. And one of the first questions I ask is like, what type of stories that you're into? If they say something like horror, it's like, yep, you're not going to find anything like that here. I just not a horror fan. I don't really care too much for horror movies at that, because the horror movies and stuff that I grew up with eventually became more like hack slash movies later on. I think the last quote unquote horror movie that I enjoy, or a series that I enjoyed, was Saw. Before it got to, I think, Saw 4 or 5. It was 4 or 5 where I fell out of it, and that's when it became more about hack slash. But 1, 2, and 3, that's my type of horror. Understanding the mindset of why dude was doing what he was doing. It becomes more of a thriller. What was it? Scary Movie. Primarily Scary Movie 3. If I remember, yeah, Scary Movie 3. I went to the movie theaters to see it with a bunch of friends and everything. 30 minutes into the movie, I already knew who the murderer was, or I should say murderers were. And the people that I went with was like, nah, you're not right about that. It's like, okay, watch. And lo and behold, I was 100% right. Because it really wasn't a horror movie. It really wasn't a horror movie. They just took you on this journey to make you jump and scream and scare and this, that, and the other. It's almost like Final Destination. Final Destination was more about going on a ride than telling an actual story. We don't have movies like The Howling anymore. We don't have, real horror movies like we used to. People don't understand why Psycho is considered a horror movie as opposed to a thriller. People don't understand, why those older movies like The Tingler is really a horror movie. They're up here, it's like, oh, they had all these different gadgets and stuff on the chair to make you jump and this, that, and the other. It's like, but if you watch the movie and understood the story behind it and put yourself in the main character's shoes, you will understand why it's a horror. Now, since I brought up The Tingler, I'm going to give you the secret of why The Tingler is considered a horror story and not, one of these, gimmicky, 1950s, 1950s, 40s, 1950s gimmick movies. Even though Vincent Price was in this one, it's the old Vincent Price horror movie. It was black and white old Vincent Price horror movie. He played a physician that was diagnosing the psychological issue dealing with how we release pain and fear, and the aspect of the yell, why we yell or scream and when we're in that much of pain, shock, or terror. And the way that the movie stated is that there's like an unforeseen force that grabs onto a body when it's in great fear. And the only way to relieve that pressure is to scream. Now, the main character in The Tingler was a mute individual. They had no capability of screaming. They couldn't talk. They couldn't talk, but they had rational thought and everything to that magnitude. And Vincent Price's character was like, if people, does not have the capability of screaming, there's a good possibility that they could lose their life to enough pressure through enough pressure, through fear, that could cause them to die, because they had no way to release that built up pressure, and that pressure was called the tingler. And even in the movie, they represent the actual sensation of the tingler to like a creature that would grab onto like your spine and start crushing it. And just so much pressure and so much pain that if you don't yell out, you could eventually die. And that's how this movie was built up and built up and built up and built up. And then you start seeing it through the mute person's eyes, because, some days it was perfectly fine and everything to that magnitude, and she's able to relieve that stress. But it got to the point, I forgot what actually happened to her. She became like overly paranoid about something. She came across something that made her overly paranoid. And little by little, minute by minute, day by day, all of that build up of stress and paranoia and fear kept building up and building up and building up and building up and building up. And each and every time it got so bad, she tries to yell and nothing comes out. She had no way to scream. And you see it, over this time frame. It's like the more she tries to yell out, the more the tingler grabbed onto her. And eventually, the movie ended up with her dying, the police finding her dead. And they couldn't find any signs of foul play and everything. And Vincent Price, kind of looks at it, it's like, it's weird. Maybe she was a victim of the tingler. And the police never understood what he meant by that, and that's how the movie ended. Those, to me, are what horror movies should be. But we look at horror nowadays as far as hack and slash and gore and stuff like that. I mean, think about it. I grew up in like the 80s and 90s. It's like we grew up with things like tapes like Faces of Death, where we got to see all these different weird aspects of things here. I have no mouth and I could scream. And that was the whole fact of the matter. If it wasn't for the fact that she was mute, the movie, the premise of the movie falls apart. That was the whole thing. It's like they purposely made it where she was mute. She really didn't have much of a voice box. She couldn't make a sound out of her mouth. She couldn't make a sound. Like you said before, it's like if you had no mouth, as long as your voice box is working, you could kind of make a sound to somewhat scream. She had no voice box. And you have to think back in like the 1940s, 1950s, having no voice box where you can make a sound is a medical condition that was viable. By today's standards, we got technology that can cure that. And I wouldn't say cure it, but technological means where, you hold something to a part of your throat and everything, you can make some type of sound. Back then, there was no such thing as that. But saying all that to say, this is what I consider horror. That's the type of stuff that I consider horror. You know, stories like that. I can't even think of the Dorian Gray. The story of Dorian Gray is what I consider horror. You know, making a deal where you no longer age, and you could outlive everybody. You could outlive everybody else. But the key thing here is that you have one secret. In order to keep that type of life, you cannot look at the portrait that was created of you by said person who gave you that gift. That to me is more of a horror story. Because you have to think about it. It's like Dorian Gray lived how many lifetimes? Until I forgot who eventually tricked him into seeing his own portrait, and he pretty much decayed into dust instantly. That's to me is horror. But, you know, to each their own. If you like the hack slash type stuff, more power to it. But, I could watch things like Nightmare on Elm Street a lot faster than I can some of the newer stuff that's coming out now. Like Chainsaw Massacre, that's not really horror, that's hack slash. Whatchamacallit to me, like, even though it's minute, Hellraiser to me is horror. Phantasm is almost borderline horror if you take away the blood and the guts and stuff. It can be horror. The third Halloween is actually horror. And that's weird because everybody who knows the whole franchise of Halloween 3 was the only one that did not follow the traditional Michael Myers stuff. Halloween 3 was true horror because we never known that Silver Shamrock was really messing around with Stonehenge in that aspect here. And they was testing everything with the whole thing about kids and putting a part of Stonehenge in the little bitty chip that was in the mask, and they were killing people left and right. That to me is more horror related than anything else because they were messing with natural forces that nobody understood. And I'm up here, it's like, yeah, how many times Michael Myers is going to chase after Laurie? It gets old after the second movie. And granted, the first movie had a major flaw. And that major flaw was, okay, you shot him out of a 2-story house and there's no body. Where did he get up and go to? There's no blood whatsoever for you to trace. And you think that it's like everything's supposed to go back to normal. It's like, no, he's still out there. And not once did you put her in like witness protection or anything to that magnitude. No. That was the first Halloween movie. Fatal flaw, but they made it into a franchise with the second movie. And then they went for that second movie to the third movie. And a lot of people didn't like the third movie because it didn't have the Michael Myers aspect of it, but it was closer to horror than anything else. But needless to say, having that more positive aspect of it is really what I'm boiled down to. It's like everything that I just stated here. It's like I didn't say it's like, oh, there shouldn't be no killing, this, that, and the other. It's like, no, this is what I consider horror. You may not think of it the same way, but I'm up here. It's like my challenge to you is like find something that you like that is horror that meets these criteria. That's like, hey, I might check it out. just like as many people talk about how Strange New Worlds is bad, now I'm beginning to understand why they're saying that after almost getting through most of season 2. Yeah, they definitely dumbed down a lot of the sci-fi, and then the last episode that I just watched, I just had to hold my head down and just be like, it just be like, well, it was going to bound and happen anyway. The episode that I'm talking about now is the crossover episode with the lower decks. I literally want to throw. I really wanted to just throw stuff at the television and everything. And then we had another episode where all of a sudden I'm watching it, and the only thing that I could think of is dang, I can't even think of her name now. Something the nurse and Spock the human come together and join this adventure time when they turn Spock human for that one episode. I was just like, no, why now why is this coming more into like adventure time type stuff here? No, they really dumbed down a lot of the sci-fi sci-fi aspects of it. Even the one just before the lower decks crossover, and this is the closest thing that we got to actual sci-fi about the whole thing, where it's like Uhura and this other crew member from the Farragut was hearing this random sound while they're trying to get this one refueling station up and going. And they was hearing this sound for no apparent reason, and it was causing them to hallucinate and all this other stuff here. And nobody could figure out what was going on. The one guy got to the point where he was so far gone that he tried to sabotage the refueling station to try to blow it up and everything, and he ended up losing his life. Uhura was up here as like, I'm trying not to go crazy, this, that, and the other. We saw what happened to this other dude and everything. And then little by little, she started to figure out what was going on. And it was a kind of like a microorganism that, an entity that was in the field that they were in, where the refueling station was at. And she realized that they were trying to communicate to her, trying to let her know, it's like, hey, what you guys are doing to refuel your ships and everything is killing us. I mean, literally, you're taking us and killing us. You're sending all of us to our deaths. And they was doing it in such a way where they was using a part of her brain which controls actual language and communication, to let her know what was going on. And they was doing it in such a way where it was making her seem like she was hallucinating, but she had to figure out to put to put everything together to let everybody else know what was going on. That was, more that cerebral sci-fi that we were accustomed to for Star Trek. But even certain aspects of that, they kind of dumbed down. And then on top of that, I still wish they, I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to hate me for it. But whenever you cast for a James Tiberius Kirk, Chris Pine was okay. William Shatner is okay. You don't go and get a Jim Carrey lookalike just because he does all of the parodies of Jim Kirk. This guy, it's like, why am I watching, a parody of Kirk from like In Living Color? Because the guy looks so much like the Jim Carrey version of James Kirk. From the mannerisms, how he responds to things, and everything to that magnitude, it was like, oh, this is just so cringy to watch. But at the same time, he's doing an okay version of early Kirk, of early Jim Kirk. He really is, but it's just the look, the feel of it. It's like, I don't want Jim Carrey version. I want a Kirk that is believable saying this stuff, not a caricature of Jim Carrey trying to pull off the more serious lines. If you get that here. Yeah, Lower Deck was the Trek writers being pissed off at that Seth MacFarlane did a better Trek. Seth MacFarlane. Let me say this here, since you're going to bring it up. Seth MacFarlane almost made Space Quest look infantile. That's how close it was. That's how well the whatchamacallit was written. Thing. I can't even think of the ship's name, because the ship's name was the actual show's name. But yes, Seth MacFarlane made Star Trek and Space Quest look infantile. Yeah, the Orville. Seth MacFarlane's Orville made Space Quest and Star Trek look infantile. That's a hard thing to do. But it also shows how much of a fan that Seth MacFarlane was of both Space Quest and Star Trek. Even with the way that they designed the characters and everything, and the interactions within the crew, and even the so-called Federation that they was a part of, it was kind of like a chef kiss to those that came before. Now, with modern Star Trek, I just don't know. I still haven't brought myself to watch Star Trek Beyond as of yet, that movie as of yet. The last Chris Pine movie. Eventually, I'm going to do that here, because I'm trying to make it through all the way through season 3 of Strange New Worlds, where I could be like, come on, get to the menagerie for this thing to be over. Because, it's Nurse Chapel. I mean, there's just certain things that I like about it, and then there's other things that I just don't. The sci-fi aspect of it, I don't like about it. A lot of the sci-fi stuff is just didn't make any sense. They dumbed down a lot of stuff here. Even with the stuff with Lower Decks, that episode is like, oh, so this animated version of Star Trek finally made, they go through this one time gate, and now they're in their world. And then this show actually acknowledges that Enterprise, the Enterprise show, the one that Captain Archer was a part of, is actually a part of the current Star Trek timeline. Because they mentioned the very first Enterprise, the NX-101. The prototype, the original prototype, the one that Archer had. So they actually made mention of that, because, again, the Lower Decks people were, quote unquote, overly geeky about all of the old timey technology that they don't have now, that they wanted to mess around and touch and all this other stuff. But it is what it is here. Wow, really? Okay, so on that note, make note to self: don't watch Lower Decks don't watch Lower Decks or Discovery, because that probably was going to make me That's probably going to make me angry knowing that fact now, because I'm not struggling with how Strange New Worlds have changed some of the canon. But if they kind of like if Lower Decks eradicated the one show that was supposed to be like the thing to watch for for the next gen, that goes beyond the next couple of generations here. Yeah, that's a problem. That is a problem. Yeah, Discovery did time travel. Yikes. So in other words, the Lower Deck messed up and they destroyed one of the major timeline ships in current continuity. Okay. Yeah, fans of the Lower Decks show loved it because the Discovery was bad on every level. Yeah. That's what I heard. Nobody really cares too much about Discovery. And the reason why they don't care too much about Discovery, because it's almost like Voyager after season 2. Nothing made sense anymore. That's what I heard. Oh yeah, we only have 4 quantum torpedoes left, but you fired over 47 times, 47 quantum torpedoes, which you could not replicate or build. You had 4 to get out of the Delta Quadrant with that remained after you did what you did. But you fired how many? Because again, there was no continuity. But it is what it is here. No, that's the thing. Whoever was show running Voyager forgot that they specifically said that they had 4 left because they built 6 total. They used, I believe, 2 on that time shift. Time shift that towards the middle of season 3, I believe, and then it's like we only got 4 left. We can't replicate this because they had all this damage and everything. They have 4 left. They had to use those very sparingly, and they couldn't even make their regular photon torpedoes anymore. So those quantum torpedoes were very valuable. They needed to get them back to the Alpha Quadrant in some type of way where they could be used and replicated. What ended up happening, the showrunners forgot what they said, and like you said, 37 was they got left. 70 quantum torpedoes where they said there was 4 left. Just like they never said what 7 of 9's real name was, even though Janeway found out what it was, but they never said it in there. No, there was 37 photon. I made a major difference between. It specifically said that these are quantum, not the photon, quantum. They only made 6 for that encounter with that time ship, because remember that the crew of that time ship was going around erasing everything out of existence, not just blowing them up. They were literally erasing them off of the timeline. So there was no acknowledgement in any type of branch of time that certain things were in existence, and the only way that they could destroy something of their technology, they came up with the quantum torpedo that would actually disrupt time enough, their whatever technology that they have time wise, to cause actual damage. Yeah, but they couldn't. Yeah, That's what I say. Is like they had 37. They had 37 full times, which they depleted. By the time we got to that particular season, and they made 6 of the quantum. They fired 2 to get out of the situation with those people. They had 4 left, and they fired 70 more because writers can't remember what they said earlier. Well, technically, Star Trek 8, technically in Star Trek 8, Voyager got back to the Alpha Quadrant by then. That was the leap that they made. Now, that was one of the leaps that they made with the quantum torpedo. Voyager got back to the Alpha Quadrant. And I still stick by this one thing. Out all the captains of any type of Galaxy class ship, Janeway was the worst captain. I put, and that speaks volumes, because the only captain that I thought was really, really bad for the time frame that they has set everything in, the only bad captain what really was whatchamacallit, Beverly Crusher on her Galaxy class medical ship. She was the only bad captain. Janeway became historically bad mainly because the writers messed everything up for Voyager. Because a lot of the decisions that they made Janeway do in after, I want to say, after season 3, I was like, nah, nah. Best captain, best Starfleet captain out of all of them, Benjamin Sisko. And I will fight people over that. Even though I must say this, Babylon 5 was the better, if I could say, Starbase series. Babylon 5 was better than Deep Space Nine. But when you look at all Starfleet captains, Benjamin Sisko doesn't play. He don't play. Yeah, she would have. Well, my whole thing with Jellicoe is Jellicoe never made it up. Well, I can't say that either, because technically Sisko was not over a Galaxy class starship. Jellicoe was also not over a Galaxy class starship. Overrated. Another overrated captain would be Riker. When Riker finally makes captain, he was overrated to me. He was overrated here. One person that I wish they would have did more stories on would have been Sulu. But you have to read like the novels and everything to understand how good of captain Sulu eventually became after he left the Enterprise. Yes, Sulu finally got his own Galaxy class ship here. I believe it's called the Excelsior. Yeah, the Best of Both Worlds Part 2, the next episode, Captain Picard with his brother. Yeah. But if you read the novels, you'll understand when Picard became captain, he mellowed out. He literally did mellow out. When he was part of Black Ops, that dude was a wild man. He was crazy. And that's the one thing one of the reasons why I didn't want to watch Picard, because I have a feeling that they was going to expose how how unhinged he can get in combat, and some of the deep dark things that he did in Black Ops. That's why I was afraid that the Picard TV series was going to expose a lot of the messed up, wild, off the top things that he did during Black Ops before he became captain of Enterprise D. I feel that Picard with his brother should have been done in snippets or next to 4 or 5 episodes that kept Captain Riker as captain for those. Yeah, with no Captain Picard, we would go look on him. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I haven't watched Picard as a series, because I have a feeling that they're going to deviate that series away from what was established in those novels. Because like I think I still have that novel sitting in the bookcase over there, Star Trek: The Return, because they was that one had a lot of the stuff that some of the stuff that he did up under Black Ops, and I was just like, wow. But anyway, people, we're getting close to the end of the show. We're almost at the 2-hour mark here, and it looks like my East Coast folks are going to be in the future because it's almost Saturday there. And I'm trying to figure out what else need to be talked about here. But the bottom line here is like with the main topic, and I hope that you guys understand that we just need more positivity out there when it comes to collecting. We need to talk more about what we do love than what we hate. We need to talk about why we love stuff more than why we dislike it. We need to turn people on to our favorite things in comic book collecting, or if you're not into comic book collecting, whatever that it is in geek culture that you love. And you do it in such a way in as far as being understanding of why somebody else may not care too much for it, and find out what they do love. Because if you find out what they do like, there might be something out there that's equivalent to what you are into that you can share with them. Yeah, season 3 was basically Next Generation season 8 30 years later. Yep. And what a Force Awakens tried to be and should have been. Yeah, I can agree to that. I could agree to that with Star Wars. I could agree to that here. And like I said, I still haven't seen Rise of Skywalker as of yet. So yeah. Oh, that would be like, no, that's not even drunk. That would be like, okay, after 2 drinks, you're like, somebody pissed me off. Yeah, we're going there now. That's the way that I look at that. That wouldn't be drunk. The drunk lady at a Comic-Con I picture is like, if it was truly drunk, it'd be like her hanging over some cosplayer that she likes, some cosplay that she likes, and be like, hey, you want to go back to my room? Type deal. But it is what it is here. So on that note, I'm going to give those guys that are on the West Coast and here in the Midwest their last hour Saturday. Well, at least here in the Midwest, the last hour Saturday. The people who are in Mountain Time and West Coast, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And those who are on the East Coast, enjoy Sunday. You're in the future. But nevertheless, you know what? Never argue with Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he is actually right. We don't see everything on the same time scale. The more you think about it, and the more it's presented, the case is presented by other scientists. He's right. Yep, it's tomorrow. Y'all in the future. Y'all in the future. So, on that note, live life, grow, and be well. And we're out of here for another Saturday. And hopefully next week we'll have something more positive to talk about or new information to share to really think about and everything. Hope that you guys didn't mind me going on that little bit of a minor rant here, but nevertheless, it's information that needs to be shared and actual history that needs to be talked about here. And to bring up a fellow comic book creator here, Randy Zimmerman, he always emphasized about people getting an education, especially getting an education about the business of comics. Until you understand the actual business and production of comics, you're going to be a little bit left behind to understand why certain things are important and why other things are just nonsense. So, you know, be a little bit smart. Do research, find out about it, and then talk about it. And then talk about it. Be out, be out here. So live life, grow, and be well. And I see you next Saturday here. Yep. See you on Facebook about or whatnot in 10 minutes here. Time for the little goobers to get to bed. Yep, because they gotta get their sleep in. And good night, Lils and Beans. See you guys next week here, next Saturday. We're actually probably going to be Thursday because you guys watch the Thursday show. So see you guys Thursday. To everybody else, good night and enjoy. Bye.